Okay. All right, so I'm recording again, but what I want to do now is just kind of go over a little bit more of the Photoshop fundamentals to get us ready to basically speak the same elementary language in both softwares. So raise your hand real quick if you already know a bit of Photoshop. Okay, so generally most of you. All right, so what I'm going to do here is introduce in a little bit more detailed fashion how to set up an image so that we can get into our first exercise with camera settings and the export process. Be aware that the export process is something that I very swiftly want to get you guys to be independent on, so that when I say that I need to see an image that's X by X or X by Y in terms of sizes, and I need that to be on a sheet that is X by Y and has this kind of spacing. That's what we're going to simulate here today. So opening up a new file, let's start off by establishing the sheet. Okay, so now it's not just, let me go back and qualify this. Now we're not just putting or making a Photoshop file for one image, we're making a Photoshop file for a few images. So if I need a sheet size, I can do that by inches and by resolution, right? That makes sense. So I'm going to switch this back to inches, and I'm going to make it an 8.5 by 11 sheet. So the width is going to be 11, and the height will be 8.5. And go ahead and stick with the... Do I want to stick with that? Yeah, we'll stick with 150 pixels per inch. Okay. Here, I want you to get in the practice of actually using your guides to set up your Photoshop layouts, or even if it's Illustrator, InDesign, whatever it is, you must use guides. Okay, it's essential for having a well-controlled, well-laid-out graphic exercise. And bear in mind, guys, this isn't the graphics class. I'm not going to heavily control how you're setting up your graphics. Super fundamentals. I just want you to know how to put multiple images on a sheet. Okay, so one of the first things I want you to be turning on with a new file is your rulers. Okay, so go to View and Rulers. And so this is going to show you basically the size of the sheet in terms of alignments and stuff like that. So notice that this top corner actually zeroes out at 0, and if you go that way, it has a number 1 to the left and a number 1 to the right. So this top left corner is your 0 point. Okay, just something to understand by orienting yourself in the sheet. These rulers can be switched to read in any kind of size or standard size. I want it to read as pixels in this case. And I also want you to understand that when you zoom in and out, the pixels will actually change and calibrate to whatever size your image is. That's weird. Here. There we go. So it calibrates to whatever size your image is. And so if I was to say that I wanted this to be a half-inch margin, then you would pull it out and you would bring it to about to the halfway mark in between the 50 and the 100, right? Because we're at 150. Whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to bring that one out and unclick. But you click on the ruler and you drag out, and you would bring it close to that mark. Now, it's going to look like it's at the 75 pixel mark, but it won't exactly be there unless I hold shift. So notice now if I'm holding shift, it's actually jumping from one line to the next. So I can just drop it right there on the 75. And then I'll go down to this one and I'll drop this one on that 75. you can scroll all the way down to the bottom, and the overall pixel count is 1275. So if I pull my next ruler guide down to 1200, that'll be 75 pixels inboard. And this one is 1650, so I need to go 75 back from that. So it's going to be 1575. So that sets up a half-inch margin around the sheet. Okay, so let's see, it was 1650, so 825. I don't really want to do that like that. Give me the halfway mark. Is that 25? Can't quite tell. No. We don't have the 825 on that one. Alright, so we gotta zoom in for the middle one as well then, I guess. Oh, notice how mine didn't really calibrate when I zoomed in. If you need it to recalibrate, like let's say if I try to zoom out. Oh, also, if you're zooming in and out, I didn't explain this one. This little magnifying glass, left click zooms in, alt click zooms out. Sorry. So anyway, zoom in to a point. Yeah.
You can just alt and scroll wheel.
Oh yeah. You can do that too.
And then if you want to pan right and left, you control and scroll wheel.
I've never done that one. Pan left and right.
Yeah. So you hold control and then you scroll your wheel up or down. It moves you left and right.
I actually didn't know that one. Thank you. So 825 is the middle, and if you really wanted to go, half inch on either side, you kind of have to split it down even more. I would say if you're going down to something like 37.5 pixels, just round it. Make it something that's going to be sensible. No one's going to be able to tell the difference between 2 pixels really, but we can go. Let's see. So if that's 25. Then we'd want to go, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go out that much. And then you'd go that far out there. Okay? So, yes?
If you misplace the guideline, how do you get rid of it?
Oh, yeah, good point. So a guideline it functions different. The thing that's kind of a pain in the butt about these is that they function differently between Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. They have weird little key clicks to either get rid of them or whatever. In Illustrator, you can just select it like an object and delete it. Here in Photoshop, you have to actually go up here to your grabber tool, your move tool, and grab the thing like this and move it off of the image. So now it doesn't exist. Right, and then you pull that back on or whatever. And let me go forward. There we go. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, so let me present this this way too. I want you guys to be thinking about efficient workflows, right? I could sit here and exhaustively split the page, every which way in order to get exactly all 4 boundaries of all 4 images that I want on this sheet. But the easiest way to do that is to just find my outer boundary. So I'll get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of that, and then size it appropriately for what I need. So you just need to do some simple math and then just lock it to the top left corner, bottom left corner, top right corner, bottom right corner. So let's do this real fast. We've got 1650. Pull up a calculator here, right? So 1650. And then minus 1 inch for the margins on either side, right? So minus 150. So we have 1500 pixels between these. And if I want to have a 1-inch space in between, then I take off another, or I guess it would be a 1/2 inch. I want a 1/2 inch in between. So I take off 75. So I've got 1425 to work with between two images. So then I split that in half. So that means the width of my image is going to be 712 pixels wide, right? And this is if you're doing something very specific to the sheet size. And then you would do the same thing for the height. So let me just make a note of that real fast. 712. So the height then we have, I think it was 1275 overall. Oops. 1275. I'm going to minus 1 inch for the margins, and then minus 75, and then divide by 2. So 525. So we have 712 by 525. Yes?
Wouldn't you still have to add the 75 since you still have the border?
What's that?
Wouldn't you still have to add the 75 since you still have the border?
Well, yeah, I think you're thinking of having all 4 images fill this area, right? So what I'm trying to do is have a 1/2 inch border around the whole thing, and then have one image up there, one here, one here, one here, but with a 1/2 inch space in between. So that's why I'm subtracting that extra 75. Does that make sense? Let's try it. I don't know. We'll see how it turns out, but let's try it. So I'm going to switch my render settings to custom, and I'm going to make it 712 wide by 525, and I think the DPI was set to 150 on the Photoshop file that I made. Yeah. All right, let's give that a shot. So anyway, let's do a quick render. It'll pop up like this. Oh, let me get in there. Make it cool looking, sort of. There we go. And I'm just going to do one version of this just to test the sizing. So I'm going to say save as. This one I'll call hidif. So now I'm going to place it. Okay, so I go to File, Place, I go hidif. Okay, and I'll drop this one here. And to test your spacing, just to make sure it's sized correctly on the render, you can just duplicate these layers. So I'll just duplicate. And then using your Move tool, the cool thing is you can just drag these objects around in Photoshop. So I'll click on the second copy and I'll pull it down and lock it. And then click on the next one, pull it across, lock it, and then click on that one and pull it down and lock it. Okay, so the math works out. I got a 1/2 inch border in between, and you guys know on your end that we actually subtracted a pixel between there, so we're probably 2 pixels off. But it's a quick way of just doing some pre-work to make sure your images are sized correctly when you put them on the sheet. Now, I have one final closing thought about this whole thing. Why is it important to make sure that your images are rendered at the size that you're putting them on the sheet? This is huge, because for those of you who are transferring to architecture school or are using this in your career, you're going to wind up. What's that?
For the quality to be the same?
Quality to be the same, yes. Printing accurately, yes, but they're secondary to this primary concern. Well, actually, yes. I spoke a little bit too soon. Scale is probably equally important to my concern. So yes, line weights is part of scaling. The reason is you are going to wind up with files that are so absurdly large that you can't even work with them. They will crash, just like I did when I was doing the actual render that was super huge. you've got to understand this, because if you make something that's rendering out at 1200 dpi and you do that 37 times and you try to export a sheet that has 37 of these on it, it's going to be massive. You won't even be able to open the file. So what that means is, know that when you're doing an 8.5 by 11 sheet, you don't really need any more. You don't need any more pixels than what you're going to need to show the information on that sheet. An 8.5 by 11 sheet is small, so your pixel count should generally be small. Any questions? Someday I'm going to bring in some of my files from school, and I'll show you how ridiculously large they are. Really, it's horrible.
Yeah, Iggy has this, he keeps talking about this one render that you did in gold.
Yeah.
He always brings it up.
Yeah, I know. He likes to talk about my work. Yeah. He likes to use it as an example of what not to do. Yeah, so anyway, in a moment I'm going to talk with you about what I'd like you to do for this particular assignment. If there are no questions, then that generally caps off the tutorial part of class. Yes?
You said it was 712 by what?
This one is 712 by
525.
525, yeah. But it won't be the same for you when you do it. All right. Cool.